welcome to the Neoprene Playmat. I'm Matt, your host, and today we're going to be talking about FOMO, or in other words, fear of missing out. I don't know if you're familiar with this concept or not, but psychologically, in our brains, there's something that triggers when we think we're going to be missing out on something, when we think we're not going to be able to participate, or everybody else is going to be able to do it, but we're not. Um, there's something that triggers in the brain that makes you sad about that, that makes you fearful of that, that makes you worrisome, and you feel empty. You're like, man, I really want to get that. And in board gaming, Kickstarter is famous for causing some serious FOMO, some fear of missing out. So today I'm laying it all out. I wanted to hop into what FOMO is and why we feel that way, and just go through a time when I experienced some serious fear of missing out. So without further ado, let's jump in here. So anytime you're on Kickstarter, there's going to be times when you see a product that excites you. It makes you say, ooh, I got to look at that. I want to look at that. That looks great. I want to have it. Ooh, but look at that price. It's a little bit expensive. And then you start scrolling through, and then all of a sudden, banner after banner, you see Kickstarter exclusive, Kickstarter exclusive. Oh, this is going to be Kickstarter exclusive. Now, if you're not familiar with Kickstarter, what that means is that the only way you can get those parts of the game are if you back it on Kickstarter. And now many companies, publishing companies, have different feelings about how they make things exclusive. Some don't include any exclusives on any of their games. They know they're going to a retail market. This is just a way for them to get distribution, especially to countries outside of like major areas of distribution like the U.S. and Canada and things. So this is a way to get people the game directly rather than trying to pitch it to retail stores halfway across the world. And so in those cases, there's usually not a ton of fear of missing out. Sure, you get to be the first one to get the product if you back it, but at the end of the day, if you live in a major market, then you know for the most part that you're going to be able to get this game in the retail market or even on the secondhand market. That being said, if you live somewhere in the world that doesn't get great game distribution, the fear of missing out might kick in. It might kick in with the idea that if I don't back now, I won't ever get this game. It's never going to come to retail where I'm at, and so I'm going to have to pay some exorbitant fee to do a trade or to pay somebody for their copy of the game that's in one of these major markets, and then I'm going to be paying way more than I would if I backed the Kickstarter. Enter in fear of missing out, right? All right, I guess I have to back it. I have to back it so I don't miss it. In other cases, some publishing companies, they utilize essentially an exclusive system to draw backers to their products. So great example of this is Come On, or Cool Mini or Not, Simon, whatever they go by these days. I think it's Come On. I think that's publicly what they said they are. But anyway, what they do is they throw a whole ton of Kickstarter exclusives. So you're paying the same retail price for the game, but if you don't back it on Kickstarter, you're going to get about half the content. And so that's really doubling down on this idea of fear of missing out, right? That's saying, well, if you don't get it now, you are going to miss out on all this content unless you want to pay double for it later on, or like it's not going to be in wide distribution. So that means you have to find somebody that has backed at that level, that's willing to part with those things. And if you already have the base copy of the game, they have to be willing to part with those things, but also not sell you the base copy of the game because you're just looking for the Kickstarter add-ons. And as you can see, this is a lot of work. This is a lot of effort you'll have to go through in order to really see what, or to get your hands on the product you initially wanted. So instead of sitting with all this fear of missing out that you're never going to get to use this content, you decide to back the game. You don't want to be all angsty thinking about all the different things. You don't want to be sitting there with the anxiety of will I ever get that expansion? And truth be told, this game might be one you bring to the table 2 or 3 times. Maybe the base game has so much content in it, you'll never even get to the extra stuff. But in your mind, when you're reading the campaign, you're like, ooh, yeah, I just want it just in case. I never know. I never know if it's going to be a big thing. And so Kickstarter lures you in or lures me in. Maybe you don't struggle with this at all, but yeah, I mean, when you have that fear of missing out, when it builds up in you, all of a sudden you look to pay a lot more money for games than you normally would. You're fearful that you're never going to have an experience that's promised by the campaign, and so you end up kind of getting lured into maybe putting more money towards something than you initially wanted. And it makes sense for content creators to do it. They're making more content for their community. It's gonna get them more reputation within the board game world, and people are going to buy more things from them. Especially if people feel like they're getting a deal on the extra content you're providing. Once again, going back to Come On Games, they for $100 on that Massive Darkness 2 campaign. I don't know if you saw it or not. You got a whole bunch of stuff. You could add $45 to get more stuff, and then there was like an all-in pledge that got you all these expansions and all the crazy stuff. But at $100, you got probably 2 or 3 times what you would if you paid retail $99 for it. So, yeah, publishers know that that's a way that they can incentivize buying their product now through a campaign, which in the case of Come On, it allows them to print and manufacture a lot more games because they've raised millions of dollars with all of their Kickstarter campaigns. So from a business model, it makes complete sense. But as a consumer, I know I don't necessarily like when I have fear of missing out. I'm always looking at myself saying, "Oh man, why am I so angsty about this? Why am I thinking about this so much?" And I guess for that reason, let's transition to my most recent case of FOMO here. So I backed a game called the Age of Atlantis, which I am super excited about. I've been excited about it from really the moment I watched kind of the playthroughs and what the game looked like. It's from Eldorado Games, and really what brought me in was this idea that there are objectives that everybody at the table is working together on, but it's a competitive game. It's not the typical semi-cooperative where the game is essentially cooperative and then somebody wins at the end. In this one, it's definitely more competitive than it is cooperative, but there are things that affect the island of Atlantis that are going to affect everyone, and you have to kind of team up and work together to remove those threats so that everybody can continue to move forward. I mean, I really like that. I feel like it emulates a lot of conflict in the real world, where countries and things are working together on certain projects to eliminate threats and whatnot. So that whole thought process sounded super intriguing. And when we look at how you could support, you can see that I'm a backer here, but they had 2 pledge levels. They had $59 for the game, includes everything, all the unlocked stretch goals, all that stuff. And then they have this retail bundle, which I'm not a retailer, so of course I'm not gonna grab that. But this made it really easy. $59 plus shipping, I get this game. And so I gladly backed, super excited. I was looking through, I mean, look at this campaign. You get this giant Poseidon, you got all these miniatures. It looks really great. No fear of missing out. I know that I'm getting all of the stretch goals. I'm getting everything in here. This is exactly what I want. Well, then the campaign ends, and they did phenomenal. And with that, they wanted to do more for their backers, which totally makes sense. And I'm super appreciative of that. I always like more stuff. At the same time, they know they can't just add a whole bunch of junk to the box without adding any cost, right? And so they come out with some optional options for us. And they advertised to us, well, what do you guys think of having all those miniatures pre-painted and the Poseidon made out of metal? Look at this Poseidon. He stands up. He's huge. He's got his huge trident here looking out over all of Atlantis. That dude being huge in metal in the middle here, that would look sweet, right? And if all these miniatures going around the outside here were all painted, I mean, let's look at these really quick. Let's look at these. They're like, this is like a Pegasus. They got kind of like an automaton sort of thing going on. They're all mechanical, Cerebrus or Cerberus. I think it's Cerberus. This Minotaur here. It's kind of cool too because they have these little like, I don't want to call them a backpack, but they hold the dice, which are workers in this game. And the Centaur, like, this looks great. And to have all these painted up, I don't personally paint miniatures. I have before, but I'm not super great at it. And I think when I paint, I like to do things that are larger, and most miniatures just seem a little too tedious for me. And so the prospect of getting that sounded great. And then they released the prices. The prices were super good. It was like, I want to say it was like $28 or something like that to get all of your miniatures painted, which like you're not going to get a better deal than that. And then on top of it, you have this giant Poseidon, 107 plus millimeters tall. That I think he ended up being 130 millimeters when they finally were done. They had something where if you shared this enough, this campaign, that he would grow as the campaign grew. And so this giant metal Poseidon was also like 28 or $30, something around there. And I was like, oh, this is a no-brainer. Of course I'm going to add these things. Of course I'm going to look at this. All right, so here's their letter. They're like, we've finished the designs. This is what they look like. Here's giant metal Poseidon. He comes in his awesome own box here that'll keep him safe because he's a big metal statue. And then here are the miniatures. You got a little gold platform. You got these nice yellow wings. I mean, like, there's no way I'm going to be painting all of my miniatures. My set's not going to look that good. And for $28, like, that's not that expensive. And look at all these things. But then I'm looking at my cart. I'm in GameFound, Pledge Manager here, and I'm like, I had budgeted $59.99 plus shipping for this game. Those were my expectations. That's what I was going to be getting. That's initially what I really wanted. That was enough for me. And these things looked great. I mean, that big metal statue looked like something I would want. The painted minis, to get that many miniatures painted, seemed like a good deal. But then I'm like, I'm doubling the price of this game, and I've never even played it. And now I know it's available on Tabletop Simulator, and I could have played it before backing, and I never got around to it. It looked good enough that I didn't feel like I needed to play it. But that said, I really had no basis to say I need to deluxeify this. There's a lot of games I get that I enjoy. I play them 3, maybe 4 times. If a game hits the table 5 or 6 times, usually that's a pretty good game in my book, but that doesn't necessarily mean it deserves an epic version of it. I have a lot of games that are deluxeified that just sit there and collect dust. And so I started thinking, is this what I want? And is it reasonable that I want all this without ever having played the game? I'm getting all of these upgrades because we hit every single stretch goal on the campaign. And as I began to think about it, I was like, I really don't need to pay $60 extra for a game. Now, if you back this campaign, you went all in, it's going to look sweet. You definitely, I'm not saying you made a bad decision or anything like that. But for me, I was sitting there and I decided not to get it. And I remember the entire next day, I was sitting at work, sitting in the office, just like, man, I should have upgraded. I should go back and upgrade. I should change my game found. I should go in, figure it out, put those new things on, and yeah, let's just go with it from there. And like, let's just pay this extra money. But then I'm thinking to myself, that's $60. That's another game. That's another backing on Kickstarter. You're getting everything except for painted minis and a giant metal statue, what are you going to do with the giant plastic one that still comes with the game? And so I'm constantly going back and thinking through this and trying to figure out what do I want to do? What makes sense? And I probably thought about this for like 3 or 4 hours, which is ridiculous. Let me tell you, I realize how ridiculous this is. Um, but I don't know, maybe you've done the same thing. If not, maybe it's just me, and I'm okay with that too. But fear of missing out's a real thing, and I think it is part of managing part of part of the hobby. And so I just sat with it and said, you know what? I'm going with the base version. I'm not adding anything. I'm happy with what I have. Um, and when it ships, if I'm disappointed, I can find the extra miniatures, find the extra statue on the secondary market. It might be difficult, might cost me a lot more, but at that point, I will know that's something that I feel like I need and want, and so I'll just go with it then. And that was really hard for me. So I'm proud of myself for getting past that. But anyway, have you ever experienced this? Have you had the fear of missing out? What games have given it to you? How have you handled it? Have you been able to overcome fear of missing out? Let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, thanks for listening and have a good one.